All right, here we are with another episode. And Dickie, so you run the company, Ninthward, and
Sure.
you go by Dickie, but your real name's Nathaniel. So let's start off with the name. How did you get the name Dickie from Nathaniel?
Nathaniel Styza. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and my whole life I went by Nathaniel and no short versions, no Nate, no Nathan, no nothing. I guess an occasional like nasty Nate, but Nathaniel through and through, like all throughout high school, realistically. And then I moved to Salt Lake City, in 2008, and pretty much the first year I lived there, my middle name Richard, Nathaniel Richard. I told my buddies that in the dorms, and it was like Dickie Styza from then on out. Everyone knew me as Dickie in Salt Lake, and everyone that I knew in Milwaukee knew me as Nathaniel. So it's still kind of that way because it happened right when I moved to Salt Lake City. Everyone started calling me Dickie, and literally everyone in Salt Lake knows me as Dickie. And yeah, I didn't even like the name at first. Honestly, I thought it was kind of corny, and I now I kind of like it. So I'm on the fence. It's sixes.
Do you feel like you have a different persona for both those people?
That's a pretty deep question. I don't know if we're ready to go that deep quite yet. We might get there, Ethan. But maybe, yeah. I don't know. I always kind of introduce myself to females as Nathaniel. So that was kind of funny. Even when I was here in Salt Lake, I would introduce myself. Even to my current girlfriend, I introduced myself as Nathaniel. My friends would call me Dickie. She'd be like, well, what do you want to call me? So, yeah, it was kind of interesting that way, but yeah.
Word. Yeah. All right, so let's get into the childhood. What was it like growing up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin?
Awesome, honestly. Yeah, I grew up in Wisconsin, kind of had the typical Midwestern upbringing. Uh, yeah, Wisconsin's awesome. I love it there. Milwaukee's cool, right on Lake Michigan. Um, I grew up in Milwaukee, which is like southeastern Wisconsin. I grew up just south of there. So I was like an hour and a half from Chicago, and I'm like 10, 15 minutes outside of Milwaukee. Um, I went to high school right in Milwaukee, on the border of Milwaukee and Wauwatosa, if anyone knows what that is. But yeah, grew up in Wisconsin, loved it there, still love it there, still visit out there as much as I can, but not quite as much as I'd like to. But holidays, Christmas, whatnot. But yeah, I love it out there. Childhood upbringing was good, mostly normal. Yeah, grew up skiing out there. I grew up skiing like with the Cub Scouts. Actually, they would go like one trip a year to the local ski resort, and yeah, it was awesome. That's how I learned to ski. But yeah, pretty cool. The hill that I grew up at, that I figured I'd mention, but I was looking it up today because it was this little hill outside of Milwaukee, and it was tiny. It was like a little garbage dump that they put a couple chairlifts on, like an actual landfill and a garbage dump, and it was literally 220 vertical feet. Like I just looked up 220 vert at this little hill in Milwaukee. But that's where I learned to ski, and I still like that place a lot. It's called the Rock Sports Complex. It was called Crystal Ridge, but that's where I grew up skiing. And there was like a giant methane chimney burning in the woods. It was like all the methane gas from the landfill, and then like two chairlifts and a tow rope. One of the chairlifts was always broken. One of them started on fire. Like tiny little ski resort, janky little lodge. And now it's crazy. They pumped like millions and millions of dollars into that place, and no, it's pretty cool.
So you so the town you grew up in, where was it a suburban town or was it like just a miniature city?
Yep, I grew up in the suburbs of Milwaukee. Yeah, 10, 15 minutes outside of Milwaukee. My first childhood home was in Greenfield, Wisconsin, and then moved to Hales Corners. If anyone knows where that is, probably not really, but Hales Corners is just south of Milwaukee.
Sick. So yeah, like so when you were getting older, when you guys would want to go out and cause trouble, would that be were you guys like driving around smoking weed like country kids, or would you go into the city and look for stuff to do there?
It was cool, honestly. I went to school in the city, and so we got into lots of trouble downtown. Yeah, I had a lot of friends in the suburbs and a lot of friends in the city too. The school that I went to was kind of cool. It was like a private. I went to a private school, and then they did like this huge scholarship program. They brought all these kids in, and like it was something crazy. Like 60% of the kids there were paying tuition, and then like 40% or 30% of the kids were on scholarship, and they were from the city. And it was an interesting dynamic of people. There was like a pretty good art program, so the school was a little bit artsy, but it was also right on the border of Milwaukee and Wauwatosa. And yeah, it made for an interesting dynamic, a lot of cultures, a lot of people, a lot of backgrounds, I would say, like that. So yeah, I was running around causing trouble all over the place, really. Yeah, maybe a little bit too much, but I went to school in Milwaukee, high school, and I ended up getting kicked out of my high school for running around and smoking weed and shenanigans like such. Childhood upbringing, mostly normal for the most part. And yeah, high school got into a lot of trouble, but it's kind of partly what brought me out to Utah. So here we are. I've been in Salt Lake City for 14 years now, going on 14 years. So it's been a wild ride. But yeah, did I answer your question, or did I just talk around in circles?
No, that was good. So after you got kicked out of high school, like what the hell's your next move? How old are you?
I was 17. Yeah, I was 17. I actually finished high school. Technically got my GED through correspondence courses. And it was even better for me, honestly. I got like I just finished my entire last year of high school, my entire senior year of high school through booklets, pamphlets, finished the pamphlet, and I was done with the course. And it was super easy for the most part, and actually graduated earlier than I would have if I wrote it out in high school, and actually started school at the University of Utah a semester early, which was kind of cool and kind of shitty because I started halfway through a semester. And my next semester after that was actually way better, and I met way more people. But so finished high school doing correspondence courses, and technically got my GED, I guess. But made it into the University of Utah, actually just barely, like seriously just barely, but made it into the University of Utah. And I guess that kind of brings us to the next chapter, I suppose. But yeah, then I started school at the U in 2008, and it kind of changed my life, being out here in Utah and being able to drive a half an hour up to Park City and ski in the morning or ski after classes and whatnot. I mean, you've probably heard it a million times on the podcast, but I'm sure
Yeah. So just quick question. I mean, so what was your parents' reaction? Because you're kicked out of high school, but then it seems like you rebounded pretty successfully, like getting into college and then like starting college early. So was it like a kind of they were of two minds about it? Like how was the reaction to the whole situation?
Yeah, good question. It was kind of a complicated situation and actually kind of a complicated point in my life. But my mom was diagnosed with cancer like 10 years prior to that. And she was, I mean, really, she was kind of dying at the time. I was getting into high school and she was on her way out. So I was, kind of back and forth from Milwaukee and Salt Lake. My mom passed away. I was like 17 or 18. And, so it was a mixed bag. They were proud of me for getting into school. There was a long time where it wasn't really looking like I was going to college. Right before my mom passed, I was getting into the University of Utah and moving out there and, coming back and forth a little bit. And, crazy time. Not necessarily like the brightest memories in general, but, my family was proud. Obviously I was fucking up a whole lot, but I guess I rebounded. Still rebounding, I guess, but I don't know. They were supportive of me. I always wanted to move out west. They knew that. I was kind of like obsessed with skiing my entire upbringing, ever since like second grade, the first time I went. So they were supportive. They always kind of knew I was going to move out west. Me, my mom, and my dad had like looked at schools. I thought about schools in Colorado and, wherever really, California, but I always wanted to move out west. Utah kind of seemed like a natural place to land, but they were,
yeah. Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that. I know that it's definitely tough, but I feel like there's a lot more people going through that than people think.
Listened to Riley's episode yesterday, and he's like talking about the same thing. And like your most recent episode. And I thought that was cool. He's talking about dedicating all his projects to his mom and his original sewing projects and all that. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So did any of your buddies follow you out from Milwaukee to Utah, or were you just going and finding a whole new social group?
Originally I was by myself. I didn't really know anybody when I moved here, and the first semester I really didn't. I met a handful of people, but starting school in the middle of the semester was a little, or in the middle of the year was kind of tough. But that next year, a couple of my homies, including Emmett, actually, which you mentioned, but Emmett and Jake Koulos, my homies moved out from Milwaukee. I had known both of them, loosely from growing up and skiing in the Midwest, but so we moved out here pretty much at the same time. And that second semester of my college experience is when I met Emmett, all those homies, Vishnu, homie for those who don't know. And that was awesome time, honestly.
Yeah. And so I don't know if you already mentioned what your major was, but did you go just to go skiing, or did you actually have something at school that you wanted to pursue?
Yeah, really, I just wanted to like go out and ski. Again, there was a long time where I didn't think I was going to end up going to college. And so when I ended up going to school, I didn't have like a concrete plan or anything like that. I had always kind of thought I would do business, which is actually what I started. I started as a business major, or I guess I did a bunch of general elective classes. And then, I was a business major for a while, but I didn't really have a concrete plan of what I wanted to do. And I actually ended up switching majors and got a humanities major. Eventually, I don't know if we're getting there quite yet, but I got my degree in international studies with an emphasis on trade and commerce, which was kind of like a backup plan to that business degree, but I was never any good at math. So it was tricky, but I kind of took my time going through school. I ended up taking 6 years to get through school at the University of Utah, but I was taking classes on like Tuesdays and Thursdays and, actually trying to ski like 5 days a week back then, which I can't really do anymore. But I was skiing a whole bunch, like almost every day back then. And yeah, it was a dream scenario, you know. Growing up in the Midwest, I'm always kind of dreaming about that. But yeah, dreams realized. So it's been a hell of a ride. I love it out here in Salt Lake. I mean, what's not to love?
Yeah. So, what was your goal for skiing? Did you just want to ski as much as possible, or were you thinking, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna go out there, and the Midwest kid's gonna go pro"? Like, what were you thinking?
I took it like relatively serious, I would say. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't like competing or anything like that, but I always just enjoyed it. And I would, try to go as hard as possible, really. But I wasn't. I don't know. Yeah, growing up, I guess I wanted to be like a pro skier or whatever. I guess for a long time, and I got pretty good. Not like crazy good or anything, but I just really like to do it, honestly, and I always have. Um, and honestly, like Ninthward was always kind of an inspiration from the jump, really. So I guess we'll get into that too. But yeah, I always skied not super competitively. I liked filming a lot, just kind of like fucking around filming. Um, yeah, back in the day, I guess like I grew up at that little hill, and then when I was in high school, I started skiing at another little hill, and I was like running around with my friend Brian Landrigan. Shout out Brian Landrigan and Andy Paskoff, and a bunch of those homies back in Wisconsin, and yeah.
Word. So, when did Ninth Ward come into the fold for you in terms of like where you were at in life? Like, did this start in college or was this after you graduated?
Well, I guess if you want to go back, like originally, I guess originally I was just a fan of Ninthward, like back in the day, or like so I guess to start off, like when I was growing up in Wisconsin, that hill I mentioned, not the first one, but the one I skied at in high school, is called Sunburst, and it was also tiny. It's like 300 vertical feet, but I don't know why, and I meant to look it up before I did this, but way back in like I don't know, it must have been like 2004 or five, I don't know, but there was for some reason like B Divine, and shout out B Divine, and a couple other like Ninth Ward riders from way back in the day came to my little hill in Wisconsin, Sunburst, and it's like a little tow road park, which is awesome. I love tow road parks, and I love that place, honestly. But yeah, I remember B Divine and a couple other homies came out, and they built this crazy setup for them. And yeah, I'll never forget it. Like I literally remember BTV dropping in switch. I could picture it like it was yesterday, like dropping in switch to this feature. I can still picture it exactly. The color, white and blue, and it was a flat rail with a rainbow after, like a crazy dragon tail thing. Dropping in switch, and like literally had like a do-rag and a grill in, and I was like, damn, skiing is fucking cool. I was just like, I had never realized how fucking cool skiing was. And I was like, damn, this is the coolest thing ever. And from that point on, I was always like, I always liked Ninth Ward skis. I rode a few pairs of Ninth Ward skis, a couple other funny stories about that, like riding demo Ninth Ward skis way back in the day. But yeah, I always kind of liked Ninth Ward. That must have been a couple years after Ninth Ward originally came out. But I always thought it was super cool. I always kind of rode like hand-me-down skis, just especially like through college. But rode on a few pairs of like demo Ninth Ward skis. I was like traveling across the country. There's this event called the Tyrol Basin Spring Jam. Crazy story. I don't know. We can get into it if you want. But at one point, I like was hitchhiking across the country, and I went. My end goal was like Tyrol Basin Spring Jam, and it's this event at Tyrol Basin, which is another awesome hill in the Midwest. And basically, I hitchhiked all the way across the country from Colorado, and made it to Tyrol Basin, rode a bunch of demo skis. My homie Brian Landrigan, again, was working with or for Ninthward at the time. And again, they had like some misprint LT skis, and they were fucking like, they were so sick. And I remember riding at Tyrol Basin and riding on Ninthward skis. And again, I was always just like a huge fan. And yeah. So yeah, always loved the brand. And then I guess flash forward, so I actually got involved way back in the day a little bit. I was like on the street team, which is kind of funny. I like hung my street team jersey up. I don't know if you can see it back there. Just like I'm looking at the back of my phone right now, so I can't even see you. So I'm probably just like staring off of this space. So, but I hung out my Ninthward street team jersey back there, which is like so old, and there's like burn holes in it and shit. But there was like back in the day, some of you probably know, but there was a Ninthward street team, and I was part of that. It was like basically they gave you pro form on skis, and wanted to sell them and promote them and all that. It was kind of a cool concept, but I had kind of been involved way back then. Not really, but I was trying to be and all that. And so it wasn't until like 2013 or 2014 that I ever really had the idea or even the thought to kind of actually get involved with Ninthward. And I guess that's kind of a crazy story too. I guess we're probably at that point in the story, but so I had gone to SIA one year, just kind of for the hell of it, really. Again, my friend Brian was working for either like Burn Helmets, I think. Shout out to all those guys. Or he might have been working for some other company at the time. But I went out to SIA and just like, the trade show in Denver, or it was in Denver at the time, went out to the trade show and just partied for like whatever, 3 days. Like I remember driving out there in a blizzard in this little convertible I had at the time, and like nearly dying, and semis passing me on the road. And I'm like driving out to Denver to go party or whatever. But I went out to SIA and, a bunch of debauchery really. And I remember, kind of chatting with the homie Brian, and he had been involved with Ninthward in the past, or at least knew Campbell and Shane, and had at least been in contact with them in the past. So I kind of picked his brain, and we're all, just shooting the shit really. And it was kind of the time period where Ninthward wasn't really making skis. There was like a year or two hiatus. Really, there was like a bunch of bridges burnt and some production that, didn't pan out. And, again, before I was even involved, but there was like a year or so hiatus, in 2013, 2014, where there were no Ninthward skis, which is kind of what sparked the idea, I suppose, at least in my mind. Was I was like drunk at SIA, and I remember hearing stories about like the Ninthward booth back in, back at SIA, and how crazy it was. And if anyone has stories about that, I'd love to hear them. But I remember hearing crazy stories about the Ninthward booth at SIA in the past. So that kind of sparked my interest a little bit. And I was like, damn, Ninthward's not here at SIA. It was my first time ever going to the trade show. And I was like, that's a fucking shame. Because again, I've always been a huge supporter and a huge fan. And so I'm like, Ninthward isn't here. I'm picking my buddy's brain about the company. I might have like got the contact from him, or just like literally from a Google search. So I hit up Campbell, right? And I'd never met him before. So Campbell and Shane were the guys who were like running the company. It was like Campbell and Mick made the company, and again, Campbell and Shane were like running the company. Again, tons of history there. Happy to go into the history, at least that I know, because I wasn't there for a lot of it. But yeah, God, where am I going? Where am I even going with this? So yeah, I got involved really then in 2015.
Yeah, you said you called. You said you called Campbell.
Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of circling, but Campbell out of the blue, and that must have been 20. Yeah, it must have been like 2013 or 2014. And I swear I exchanged like 100 emails back and forth, like again, kind of fanboying maybe a little, and like kind of like telling him, hey, I'm going to business school and I love Ninthward. Like, what's up? Like, what's the plan? What's the plan? And not that it was any of my business at the time, but I'm like, I want to support Ninthward any way that I can. Like, what's up? Can I buy fucking skis? Like, how do I support you? Regardless, And he's kind of like at a dead end a little bit. He's like not even sure if he's ever going to make skis anymore. So I'm like, that can't happen, I'm like, I fucking Ninthward sick. I don't want Ninthward to fucking die. Not that, I really had any skin in the game necessarily, but I'm out here in Utah. I'm going to school at the U, and I'm like, I don't know. Maybe this could be a fucking thing. Maybe Ninthward doesn't have to die. So seriously, so I exchanged a million emails with Campbell, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to school for business. Like, let me run Ninthward, and a million more emails, and then I guess long story short, and then we can go into any details that you want. But I broke my ankle back in college, and my heel, I broke my calcaneus, and pretty gnarly injury from a street spot. A bunch of the homies were there. I could probably tell you the stories, but I think Emmett was there actually. A bunch of other homies were there, but yeah, I broke my ankle pretty bad. I was laid up, and I guess what I'm getting at is I was laid up after the surgery. I got a bunch of hardware removed on my foot in 2014 or 2015 or both actually. And I was like, fuck it. I wrote a 10-page business plan, and I sent it to Campbell, and he was probably like, oh damn, this kid's like actually serious. And so yeah, millions of emails later, we were like signing contracts, and I tried to negotiate it fairly, and again, I was always a fan first and a supporter first. So yeah, I bought the company. Really, I got a screaming deal, I suppose, but I basically bought the company, and I told Campbell that I'll continue paying him 10% of net profit up to a certain point, and we can get there too. But obviously, I'm a tiny little brand and don't really make a ton of money, so it's been been kind of a ride. But yeah, I still am kind of paying it off technically, but I kind of worked it into the contract that as long as I'm keeping the company alive and still filing for a business license, that even if I'm not making hand over fist, that I can keep running the business and, still kicking back 10% or whatever up to a certain point. So those are kind of the rough details. So again, I always never wanted to step on any toes. And again, that's kind of how I got involved. But
That is super sick, dude. All right, so I'm stoked on this story. So I mean, maybe we should open with this, but for the viewers that don't know, Dickie is like the second iteration of Ninthward, and like you've already explained, you took over the company. So when you say that you bought it from him, do you just buy like just everything, all the trademarks, all that? Like how what did you actually physically, or not physically, but like what was in the contract that you bought from him?
yeah, so I basically bought the rights to the name, the rights to the branding, and all that. So I mean, most of the value, in my opinion, and some people would say that the value is like dwindling. Some but the value was always kind of intrinsic to me, in that the real value was like the reputation of Ninthward and how it was a sick company, in my opinion, and always was and always will be. And so, yeah.
Sick. And so, I mean, you're in college. How did you have the confidence to say like, oh yeah, I can make skis? Like, did you have contacts at a factory, or were you just hoping to use like the same
Well,
supply chain as him?
I probably had too much confidence, really, but I was kind of so I guess backtracking, I was kind of building skis at the time, not like for Ninthward or anything like that, but yeah, it is kind of a cool full circle in that back in like 2014 or something, I was me and my homie Chris Trunick, shout out to Chris, and his family and his new kid. But we were making skis in his garage. He lived with that homie Brian that I mentioned, Brian Landrigan, and we were making skis in his garage. So, I mean, I always loved skiing. I was always kind of scheming, but we were building skis in his garage. That was before I had ever communicated with Campbell or anyone from Ninthward. We were building skis in the garage, and they're pretty sick. I've got like some photos of them. I mean, they're pretty sick, but they were like handmade, vacuum pressed skis built in a garage. So it was pretty rudimentary, but we had always talked about, I don't know, building skis way back in like the idea phase for Vishnu. Me, Emmett, and Chris were all, and Kale were all in communication. And yeah, it was kind of cool, honestly. Like, I remember when Vishnu was in the idea phase, and just watching Emmett grow the brand from, in these last few years has been cool, and especially seeing them, start from the ground up. So yeah, I was building skis at the time. We were all kind of fucking around, building skis, trying like some cool, honestly, we were doing some pretty cool stuff with different laminates for wood cores and things like that, carbon fiber in kind of interesting ways, and braided patterns and things like that. So, but we were making skis and kind of, I guess really doing some early R&D. But again, that was really before I had ever had the thought of, being super involved in Ninthward, because it wasn't really until that year at SIA and I had the idea. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Totally, absolutely. And so my other question is, and it's a bummer we couldn't get him on the podcast, but because I don't even know how to get in touch with him. I'm sure actually you would be able to get in touch with him. But like, what's the origin of Ninthward itself? I know that the founder was from New Orleans, hence the name Ninthward. If anyone's not familiar with the ward system down there.
What's the origin of Ninthward?
Yeah, just like how the company got started overall, like, but even before you.
Yeah, as far as the origin of Ninthward is concerned, again, I was involved from 2015. The origin of Ninthward is all the way back since 2002 and 2003. So again, it was really Campbell and Mikkel who were originally running the show, and they basically, the story goes, Mammoth Lakes, 2002, 2003. There was, that original core group of Ninthward homies, and they were all super close, and they were all living out of some spot in Mammoth. And, they ended up starting a ski company, and the rest is kind of history. But yeah, as far as the origins are concerned, they go way back to like the origins of freestyle skiing almost, So they go way back to like 2003, twin tip skiing at least. But so yeah, Ninthward's been around forever, before I was even like into park skiing, really, So the origins run really deep. And again, that's why I was kind of inspired early on, because yeah, fucking early Ninthward was like super sick, which is kind of why I try to keep the dream alive. But again, super core, and kind of like that was like the pinnacle of like skiing and skiing being cool, at least for me, in my perspective. So yeah.
Sick. So what you did with Ninth Ward, I'm super impressed because I'm a big proponent of if you want something, you have to ask for it. You can't just expect what you want to come to you. So have you always been like that, where you're like, I want this, I'm gonna go after it, or was this the first time where you're like really going out of the box, asking for something crazy?
Yeah, I'd say I was kind of always like that. You know, I was always a bit of a go-getter, I suppose. And especially things that I was passionate about, I guess. Like, I really like latch on to things that I'm passionate about, you know, hobbies or whatever, really. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree. If you want something, you gotta like take the initiative. Kind of like built my whole general career based around that, like not even involving Ninth Ward, but yeah, absolutely. If you want something, go and get it. You know, I kind of the idea kind of came from nothing, and yeah, I was persistent for sure. I guess I would definitely say that in general I'm persistent. So in most aspects of my life, really. And I procrastinate a whole lot too, but I would say in the long run, long game style, I am persistent for sure. So I definitely think looking back, that definitely played its part. Because yeah, when I say I exchanged a million emails with those guys, like they probably were like hoping I would shut the hell up and probably leave them alone. But again, it all worked out in the end, and you know we're all on good terms. So yeah.
Yeah, that's sick. I mean, you're hitting all the. I completely agree with the persistence part too. You could do anything as long as you're persistent enough, and as long as you're patient enough to wait, years for potentially for something to pan out. But that's usually, if you're waiting that long, it's usually something that's worth fighting for. Um, I'm so glad you said that because I completely agree. Um, all right, so you get the company in your hands, and where do you go from there? Because you finally lock down the deal, but then you actually got to do the work.
Right. Yeah. So I guess you mentioned that a little bit earlier, but yeah, at that point, it's like, yeah, what the hell do you do? You know, it took me so long to kind of negotiate the deal, probably like, you know, a couple of years or, you know, over a year negotiating the deal, really. So at first, I had really focused all my effort into that. I'm like, well, I can't really do anything until this becomes a reality. So, yeah, I certainly didn't come from an industry background or anything like that, and I certainly didn't have a good like idea of what to do. But again, I kind of just, you know, once it became a reality, I was like, oh, I got to figure this out, you know, and I had a lot of flexibility technically, but yeah, it was tricky. I kind of just reached out to a bunch of places and got, you know, the way things generally work as far as ski production is concerned is usually you have to, I mean, minimums are crazy, especially if you're building skis overseas or something. I've always built my skis here in the States since I've been involved, but, and you know, it's neither here nor there, but yeah, I reached out to a bunch of contacts and got a bunch of quotes. You know, a lot of companies saying like, yeah, if you buy a mold and order 100 181 centimeter skis, we'll give you this price. And I'm like, yeah, there's no fucking way. I had just pretty much spent most of my life savings like buying the company. So yeah, I didn't really know what I was doing, but what I ended up doing is reaching out to a million people. And some people, I guess some people know this, but in 2015, I got in contact with Never Summer Snowboards in Colorado, because I was like, I didn't really care either way, but I was like, I think I'd rather make skis in the US just, because of the stigma of skis built elsewhere. So I was like, I'd rather build skis in the US. So I reached out to Never Summer Skis, and they had actually built some Ninthward skis way, way back, like some like really early Ninthward skis and maybe small runs or something. But yeah, I reached out to them. So, and it was good timing there because they were just starting to do OEM manufacturing. So they were like, yeah, we'll build skis for you. And the minimums were a little better than overseas. And the prices were obviously higher than overseas. But yeah, so that's where those first white Ninthward skis back in 2015, the first skis, since I brought things back, those came from Never Summer, and they were pretty badass. I skied on the same pair, mostly just for the sake of principle, but I skied on the same pair like for 3 years or something like that. Skiing, at least like 70 days plus, and lots of street spots and concrete and stuff like that, just for the principle, really. But those were good skis. Kind of wish I had some at the moment, but yeah, those are good skis. And I just reach out to them, and they gave me a quote. So it gets a little bit more complicated than that as far as like overseas production, and especially if you're making your own custom molds and things like that. But there are options available, and there are companies that will do OEM manufacturing. I mean, you could say there's examples of that all over the place right now. Small.
So what does OEM stand for?
Original equipment manufacturing. It's, I guess what I mean by that is Never Summer obviously makes their own snowboards. They've made a bunch of Icelandic stuff. Everyone knows that. A bunch of other companies that are probably lesser known, but Never Summer was like, we'll make skis for other people. We'll make skis for you. We'll make skis for Ninthward, whatever. So they were just starting to do that. They had always made like contracts, manufacturing stuff, but yeah. So that's basically just somebody else making the product, and that's kind of across the board as far as manufacturing goes, I believe. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. And so it's more the shape of the ski that's important than the top sheet, correct? Like, could you do like, say the minimum's 100 just for an easy number? Could you do like 25 of one top sheet, 25 of another, blah blah blah, as long as it's the same mold?
Yeah, generally not. No. So that's kind of what makes it tricky, and it's kind of what makes it expensive as far as doing like big runs of skis, especially for a small company. Is that even at the absolute lowest, I was able to like get 25 minimum per size. So that first run, I made 3 different sizes, which in retrospect maybe I shouldn't have done all 3, but I made 180s, 170s, and 160s, and like again, there's minimums, and it depends on the place, but again, a lot of places are 100 minimum per size and graphic, like per SKU, like so yeah, it's tricky that way, which is kind of led me to what I'm doing now, which is again a little bit different, but yeah, tricky. You need a lot of money to do that, and that's definitely not something that I have. So yeah, it's tricky, but yeah, like minimums per SKU and per graphic, and that's the most challenging part.
Yeah.
In my
So did you inherit the entire library of top sheets?
I wish. No, that's a little bit complicated. So, I mean, the white top sheet that everyone's seen is definitely inspired by an original top sheet, and a lot of people know that, but an original or a top sheet from like 2012. Damn, I wish I inherited all the top sheets. No, again, most of the value is all intrinsic value. and it was mostly just buying the rights to the name and all that. But you know, Campbell himself had designed a lot of the top sheets, and I'm still, you know, obviously I'm on good terms with him, so I've got some access in that regard. But there was other people who designed some of the other top sheets. So again, I tried to keep everything prior to when I got involved in 2015 and try to keep it all separate, because I mean, for a number of different reasons, but I couldn't just like go take somebody's graphic that was contracted to do the work back when, you know. So yeah, and I don't have a graphic design background either, but again, Campbell was responsible for a lot of those graphics. So yeah, a lot of times I've thought about doing, you know, and I have done some, but like throwback graphics and things like that. But honestly, like all those graphics and all of his graphics back in the day were awesome, in my opinion. Yeah, super cool.
Yeah. And did you, like, at that point, you said it was kind of inactive for a couple of years. So were there any team riders or anybody that still wanted to be affiliated with it, or were you starting basically clean slate?
A little bit. I mean, not really. There was a handful of people who were involved previously that wanted to be involved again. Yeah, like Scrappy Joe, ultimately, you know, had ridden Ninthward before and was hyped to get back on board for a little bit. You know, ultimately, I couldn't really support him all that much, but like, yeah, I kind of started from scratch. I gave skis to Jake Carney back at the beginning, which was awesome, and Jake Carney kind of blew up. But another homie, Sibo, was kind of on the program before. I mean, B Divine just has like a library of skis. So he's kind of running out of park skis. So I'm trying to make him some new park skis. But yeah, there was, you know, again, B Divine was, you know, always riding the skis. There was a couple people like still involved that were previously involved. But no, it wasn't like I had a team ready to go or anything like that, or even like a plan for a team. And I probably should have planned more. But I was like, I got to give away some skis and I got to get the word out, and I can't give away too many skis or I'm not going to make my fucking money back. And so I didn't really have a concrete plan, but again, I gave away, you know, a few handfuls of skis and got the product out there a little bit and tried to get the word out there again a little bit. But yeah, no silver platter, unfortunately, but yeah, mostly from the ground up. And yeah, you know, gave some homies some skis and gave some people that I liked watching ski, gave them some skis. And yeah, so kind of just figured it out. I mean, kind of figured it all out just like off the cuff. So yeah, certainly no expert in that regard, but you know, again, just trying to make it work. And I'm still super passionate about it, and yeah, love it. So yeah, again, what's not to love? But again, always been a big supporter. So hyped to make it all a reality, and like all the support is unreal. So
Yeah. So I mean, so you definitely had passion driving you. Did you in terms of like maintaining your confidence starting out something completely new, like you said that you saw the start of Vishnu as well. Did that kind of give you a notion like, yeah, like even if it's difficult, this is totally possible?
absolutely. Yeah. You know, I saw all that firsthand, and I mean, even more so today, I'm like, damn, they really blew up, and they're doing awesome things. So yeah, it was cool. It was really cool to see the entire process and, you know, kind of be somewhat involved, at least, you know, seeing it and, you know, giving some input, you know, I guess at some points. But yeah, awesome to see all that evolve and grow. And yeah, it definitely, you know, gave me that confidence to believe, you know, yeah, that this is totally possible. So yeah, I mean, again, it's a huge inspiration there, and all the Vishnu boys, you know, Emmett, Dylan, Kyson, and Luke, and everybody else. So homies with all those dudes.
That's awesome. So how are you running it today? You said that things might have changed a little bit. So what's like the current? How's everything working these days?
Yeah, so I kind of, I guess, toned it back a little bit. I mean, for a number of reasons, but after buying all those skis and uh, having all that inventory in my tiny little apartment, I was like, damn, how the hell am I supposed to do this? It just, I guess what really happened is that I was kind of stuck with a bunch of the 161 short skis, which is kind of funny because the 180s sold really good and the 170s really good, sold really good. And then anyone who was like 161 centimeters and below had no idea what Ninthward was because, they were too young or whatever. So it was kind of funny, but yeah, I held on to a bunch of those 161 skis. But so I kind of toned it back a little bit. I was like, I can't hold on to all this inventory, let alone afford all this inventory. So, tried to get creative again, reached out to companies about small run skis and, test batches of skis and demos. And, some companies would be, some manufacturers would be like, well, our minimum's 100, but we can do a test batch of 10 pairs of skis or whatever. So I tried to figure out like how I could make skis kind of more small run, which sounds and is really expensive, but I was like, maybe I can negotiate something where I can build skis one at a time. So again, I've been in Utah for 14 years. So as of right now, my friends who also build skis are building, they build their own skis to their own brand, and they're making our skis here in Salt Lake. So right now I build them one at a time. And yeah, they're all made to order. I don't think that's going to continue forever. And I've been saving up some money to build some skis and have some small inventory of skis, and doing some custom runs and one-off graphics and stuff like that. But as of right now, I'm pretty much building them made to order. So basically, people hit me up. They tell me that they want them, and I tell them how long it's going to take. So kind of depends on the time of the year, but we don't do crazy numbers or anything like that. But when people want to rep Ninthward, I'm like, hell yeah, okay, I'll make you a pair of skis. Here's what it's going to cost. So
what have you been doing for full-time work during this whole process? Because this does not sound like like you're making enough money to support your life.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've been working pretty much, mostly full time throughout ever since I've, got involved. But I worked in bars and restaurants like most of my way through college. And I guess partially or mostly because I could like work in bars at nighttime and I could ski all day. So I could still like work a job and make some money. And again, always trying to just like ski as much as I possibly could. And so yeah, I worked in bars and restaurants for a long time. And it's kind of an interesting story, but to answer your question, right now I'm managing a restaurant downtown here in Salt Lake City. And I started as a bar back. So I started like at the lowest rung in the company like 4 years ago at this place. And yeah, now I'm managing. And yeah, it keeps me very busy. Like I'm working 50 hours a week and then doing Ninthward stuff on top of that, and still skied a ton this winter, and stay pretty active in the summertime too. But I don't know. I like to stay pretty busy personally. So yeah. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Totally. And I mean, I got to draw the comparison. So with Ninthward, you started out on the lowest possible rung. You started out as a consumer and a fan, and now you're running the place. And the same thing with the restaurant. You started off as probably, arguably, one of the lowest positions you can be. Maybe a busboy is slightly lower than a barback, but and now you're running the show there.
Yeah, that's cool. Actually, I like that. That's a good comparison. But I mean, I never really thought about it that way. But I mean, seriously, if you can get your foot in the door someplace I hopped around from job to job for a while, and it's like, you're never going to move up if you're just bouncing after a year. So it also doesn't look too good on the resume. So, which is tricky, especially for a lot of people who are like trying to ski a whole bunch, trying to keep a consistent job and make it out to Mount Hood for the springtime and shit like that. So I bounced around a whole lot from job to job, but then I ended up kind of settling. Well, not like settling, but settled in and kind of worked at the same spot for 3 and then for almost going on 4 years, I think now. So I got my foot in the door and then wiggled my way up. So
Do you want to plug the restaurant or you want to stay anonymous?
yeah, come on down. I work at the Copper Onion, and it's a damn good restaurant, honestly. So I'm proud to work there. We're right downtown in Salt Lake City, and next to the Broadway Theater, if you know where that is. But 300 South and State Street, and we got a fucking awesome burger. Probably one of the better burgers in town, and we can whip you up a beef stroganoff. Also, that's nice. So, it's honestly been a cool experience, and it's a good company to work for. And I eat all sorts of good food and for free, and it's awesome. Yeah, I like working in a restaurant. Again, most of my background was working in bars and bartending, which is also fun. But I bartended for a lot of years, again, mostly so I could ski all day and work at night. But it definitely brought me to what I'm doing right now, working in a restaurant. So
Sick. And so, I mean, a lot of I personally love Salt Lake, but every time I'm talking about Salt Lake with people that are like aren't in the ski scene, they're like, "Oh, isn't that just like the Mormon city?" So like, how's the nightlife there? Having having
that's
with the regulations so closely tied to the church.
yeah, that sounds like every conversation, from like everyone comes into Salt Lake and they're like, or even from an outside perspective, they're like, oh yeah, the Mormons. And it's like, yeah, we've got a ton of LDS population in Salt Lake. But as far as the nightlife is concerned, you won't really see somebody who's LDS hanging out on Main Street where the bars are and whatnot. So like I live right downtown, and basically I'm 2 or 3 blocks away from the temple where I'm sitting right now. But it's like, I don't know, Mormons are all super nice from my perspective. I walk down the street and walk my dog and say hello, and everyone's super friendly. So there's really not that much. I mean, I don't know. It's like, as far as the nightlife is concerned, you're definitely not seeing too many Mormons out and about.
Yeah, but like so do the regulations affect the nightlife? I think last time I was at a bar there, they were saying they can't pour doubles and all this other stuff.
Yeah, as far as like working in a bar is concerned, absolutely. I mean, here in Utah, the state controls really all the booze. So all state-run liquor stores, all taxed, so they can bring in some extra bucks. And Lord knows they do. But yeah, all the booze in Utah is heavily taxed. And I mean, working in a bar is a little tricky. Like, yeah, you certainly can't pour a double. Like, there's all sorts of dumb rules, but like, I can give you 1.5 ounces of whiskey, but I can't give you 3 ounces in the same glass, but I can give you 1.5 ounces. I can give you 1.5 ounces after that, and I can give you 1.5 ounces after that. But you can't have both of them in front of you at the same time, because I don't know, because then you could get drunk or something. Like in my restaurant, we've got a little bar area, but we've got a restaurant license, and like there's some tables that are 5 feet away from the bar, but technically, the guest isn't allowed to walk their beverage from the bar to the table that's 5 feet away or across the restaurant. But because we have a restaurant license, like the state is afraid for them to like walk with their beer to their table. Like, who knows what could happen. But yeah, so there's weird laws like that in Utah for sure. But I've only bartended in Utah. I mean, obviously liquor laws in Milwaukee, Wisconsin are pretty opposite to here, but I never bartended there. So everything that I learned about, bartending and, spirits and whatnot, I learned here in Utah. So, yeah, lots of weird laws as far as that's concerned. I mean, a laundry list of them, really.
Cool. I just wanted to ask because I figured being a bartender in Utah would be difficult. So what's the vision for the future of Ninthward? You kind of gave us a little taste of it, but like, what's like if you had to talk to an investor, what's the long term vision?
Yeah, it's a good question. Again, I mean, I told you that I'm always kind of reaching out to contacts and talking about potential production runs, even stuff like that. Trying to have manufacturers in my back pocket, for future endeavors potentially. But yeah, future plans. I mean, as of right now, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to keep building skis in Salt Lake, but I have certainly thought about doing some more small production runs. I've thought about making skis here in the US still. I thought about making skis in Europe a little bit. And, again, if I'm going to do some small production run, I'll get better prices. And I can, again, I mean, end goal, I'd really like to bring my price down a little bit. Right now, I'm a little bit more expensive than I'd like to be just because I'm building skis one at a time. But in the long run, I'd like to have some cheaper options available too. Especially growing up as a park skier, I know what it's like, trying to keep fresh skis on feet year after year. So I want to make some durable, affordable skis. I'd like to continue doing some kind of one-off stuff and one-off graphics and one-off shapes. But I don't know. I think that Ninthward's got lots of potential to grow. Again, it's not my full-time job, and I am the sole employee, if you will. But yeah, I think there's a lot of potential. I want to keep making some clothing. I want to keep making skis. I want to keep making clothing, and yeah, I think there's lots of room to grow, really, and I intend to. So I'm excited about the future, and excited about keeping nines on my feet for sure.
Sick. So we got some viewer questions.
Oh, yeah.
The first one you expressed some concern about before we started recording, but what is your hot take?
Oh yeah, I was like, what is a fucking hot take even? It's like that on top or something. No, just kidding. I was like, what is a hot take? Because I feel like most of the hot takes that I've heard on the show is like this, like some sort of negative thing, like something that people don't like or whatever. But I don't know. Yeah, I was like, I really don't know that I have a hot take. Is what I admitted to you, but I said I'd think about it, so I certainly have been. But yeah, I don't know. I would say my only hot take is kind of like a good hot take, and that's like I just want to shout out the people who I think are doing really cool things. And again, all my boys at Vishnu, all the child labor homies, and all the mill bastard homies, I think are at kind of the pinnacle of what is cool in skiing right now. So my fucking hot take is that that's the shit that's cool. And there's a lot of other shit out there that's not so cool. So I guess maybe there is some negative in there as well. But yeah, I think like, skiing in the street and kind of doing your own thing in that way is like the coolest thing about skiing and, getting creative that way. So that's always kind of been my influence all along, but that's my hot take is that's the cool shit in my opinion in skiing. And like, there's a lot of goofy shit out there too, as there is in most aspects of life. But yeah, does that work?
Yeah, that works. We'll take that for sure. We won't force you to call any crews out that you don't like, unless you want.
I won't. I won't. But yeah, and do your thing for sure. But yeah, again, I just think that that's kind of what's at the pinnacle right now. I think that shit goes hard.
Word. So we got 4 viewer questions total, and it's basically split in half. It's two people asking the same two groups of 2 people asking similar questions. So David Baird 0 and whoever submitted this one's gonna have to forgive me. Sindre Plazin. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. So one of them's asking, can we get some OG top sheets like the Edolos? And will we see Henrik riding nines again? So basically, very similar questions.
Awesome question. Like myself, a lot of people are inspired by Henrik, and yeah, Henrik rode for Ninthward for a long time, and that was again kind of like the height of Ninthward, in my opinion. So, will there be a Henrik Harlowski? I mean, that doesn't really make sense right now, but I get a lot of people saying that they really like that graphic. So yeah, I've been playing around with like some white and gold. That's I'm actually hoping to make some of this summer, but some white and gold, if that's what you mean. But yeah, yeah, good question, really. Yeah, I think again that was kind of the height of Ninthward when all those cats were still repping. But I mean, kind of pipe dream. I've always thought like, I would love McD to have more involvement in Ninthward. He was always there from the beginning. And I respect his opinion and his insight as far as the direction of the company realistically. But, Henrik is the GOAT, really. Everyone knows that. And yeah, while I don't really see that as something that's realistic, but man, if Henrik and McD want to get involved with Ninthward, like by all means, hit me up. But yeah, all the love and all the respect for both of those dudes. And yeah, I love that graphic. Everybody does. But yeah, white and gold. If there's something else that you want to see, I would be happy to make it. But yeah, everybody loves that graphic. I love that graphic. That's probably the one you're talking about, I assume. There were some other cool ones too. Some red and black ones with the bones on it. And yeah, but I really like that yellow or the gold and white kind of one with the fluid on the tail and all that shit. That's probably the one you're talking about, David.
Yeah. Cool. And then the next set of questions is it's a call out. You're getting called out by Patrick Ring and Dylan Manley. Do you want to guess what they asked about?
Bring it. Yo, what do they have to say?
So Patrick Ring, he said, will we ever see the decade plus of footage he's sitting on? And then Dylan Manley, pretty much at the same time and night, I don't know if they were together, he also ask him when his decade plus part is coming out and why the answer is never.
Wow. Well, there you go. You got your answer right there. The answer is never. No. Awesome. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, they love to talk about the 10-year part, but I like skiing in the street and I like filming skiing, and I've got quite a few shots that I've sat on for a long time that some of them I like and some of them I don't, and I never really had any plan for them necessarily, and I still don't. I like to post shots on Instagram currently because it's 2022. And yeah, I don't know. I guess I've like been in some film projects and stuff like that, but never really had a legit part. I guess, again, I'm a little particular. So I would love to make a part, but again, I want to have like some creative vision for sure. But Patrick Ring is super talented, and I'd love to film with him some more, and have talked to him actively about filming with him some more. And Dylan's one of my favorite people to ski with, as I mentioned before. So is there ever going to be a 10-year part? I don't know. I don't think it would be good because like I don't think it would be cohesive, but I also, if you're making a 10-year part, it's not really supposed to be cohesive. But I do have some clips that I like that I'm going to post on the internet. So I'll probably just keep doing that. So that's why the answer is never. I don't know, maybe 10 years from like now, to 10 years from now, that would be a good decade part. But we'll see. Could still happen. I'm open.
Oh, that'd be sick. Thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. You want to shout out anybody? Definitely plug the website where they could find you. Yeah,
Cool.
let's wrap it up for everybody.
Yeah. First of all, thank you. I really appreciate you bringing me on. I don't really do too much of this stuff, and I was definitely nervous. So, thank you very much. I really do appreciate it, even though I can't fucking like see you right now. I'm just staring at my phone. So, sorry if I'm staring off into the distance. And again, thank you very much. I mean, as always, I want to shout out everyone who did this before me in the ski industry. All of the OGs. I mean, I've got tons of people to shout out. Honestly, I've mentioned most of them already, but again, Andy Paskoff and Brian Landrigan, original influences back in the day. All my homies here, Vishnu boys and all of them that I ski with to this day. Big shout out to my family. Again, shout out to my mom, rest in peace. And again, my family and my friends who support me, all the Ninthward fans out there and all the Ninthward supporters. Really, again, I've got, tons of people to that I owe my respect to. So big thanks to everybody. And again, thank you for having me on. Appreciate it very much. Oh yeah, and I know we talked about having some crazy stories. So there's about a million other crazy stories that, might be a little bit more in the PG-13 realm, but yeah, loads of stories there. So I'd love to hear some more like original Ninthward stories, like I mentioned, Ninthward booth, shit like that. But yeah, I got plenty of other stories too. So yeah, seriously, nice talking to you. I'm an open book if anyone has questions as far as Ninthward is concerned. But yeah, the Ninthward website is just ninthward.com. I've got a big cartel website, but you can find it at ninthward.com. A lot of people don't even know that it exists still. So I don't know. Hopefully we'll get some traction. But again, I've been keeping it super low key, keeping it small, making skis when I can, and trying to keep it sustainable. So appreciate all the support. I really do.
Awesome. All right.